I don't know why, it's dining room light, I guess.
It's recording now.
Recording. I'm going to go ahead and mute all and have Meryl have the mic here.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay, let's get started here. Time is short. I'm Merrill Ring. I'm going to be the interviewer tonight. That's the famous Sam Pedroza running the meeting up there on the technical aspects of it. Okay, first of all, let me just say something about what we're doing tonight. The Democratic Club of Claremont is a Democratic club, chartered as such by the Democratic Party of California. As a result, we cannot offer a platform to members of other political parties, which means we cannot interview candidates from other political parties. That's why we have to make a selection among Democratic candidates. On the other hand, we as political activists and people who live in Claremont and wish for a well-regulated, well-run, well-governed city, we do want to have something to say about our local elected officials. So what the club does is interview, in line with our charter, only Democratic candidates, but we do remind you that this is the situation we find ourselves in. We cannot interview anybody else. So that is the reason you'll be finding only Democrats, but not all of them, because they didn't all respond positively to our invitation on these interviews in the next 2 nights. We have 2 nights of interviews, as I said. Executive board will be meeting on September 19th, deliberating about what recommendations to make in the local races. The recommendations will go to the membership meeting on September 28th, where discussions will occur and endorsements will be made. Remember that the ballots will be mailed out, I don't know, October 3rd or 5th or whatever it is. So there's plenty of time between the club's recommendations and the arrival of the ballots to make your choice known. Time is short. We do not want to drag these meetings out too long. So one of the results is that the club has decided that only official questions will be asked at these Zoom meetings the next 2 nights, that there will be no comments made. If, however, you do want to comment, there is a means. Since we're on Zoom, if you go to the chat room and write in your comment, then it will be, since all the recordings will be preserved, the chat room will be preserved, and the comments you make there will be available to the executive board in its deliberations on September 19th. We have allotted 15 minutes per candidate, broken down into 3 minutes for initial presentation, 10 minutes for answers to questions. That is to say, there are 5 questions at 2 minutes apiece, 10 minutes, and then a final 2 minutes for the candidate to make a closing presentation. I'm going to be the timekeeper, and we're going to see how this works. I will indicate the end of time by just simply interrupting. I hope not too unpleasantly, but nonetheless forcefully enough to remind you it's time to move on to some other topic. We, as the executive board, have created jointly 5 questions for each race. We considered more than that, and we narrowed it down to 5 questions. The candidates have all received the questions. There's no surprises out here about what they're going to be asked. Tonight, we're going to start with the candidates, the 3 candidates for the school board, and the 1 candidate who responded to our invitation for the District 5 council seat. For the first time in the last 3 election cycles, there is open positions on the school board, and so there are elections. There are 2 open positions on the school board. There are 3 candidates for those 2 positions. All 3 candidates are registered Democrats. All 3 those candidates will be here tonight being interviewed. Their sites were available on the website and on the flyer that we put out. Their websites are there, so if you want to check out more about them, feel free to do that. We have chosen to go, of course, in alphabetical order, and so the first in the alphabet is Kathy Archer. Kathy, I do hope you're here.
She is.
I'm here.
There she is. Okay. Okay, Kathy, we will start. You get your 3-minute opening presentation, and then I will ask questions.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Again, my name is Kathy Archer. I'm running for one of the 2 open positions on the Claremont Unified School District School Board in the November election. I've lived in South Claremont for 25 years. My husband, Bill, and I have a 15-year-old daughter, Shelby. She's a sophomore at Claremont High School. For the past 23 years, I've worked at Charter Oak High School in Covina. And throughout my tenure there, I've held numerous leadership roles on campus, including department chair, leadership team chair, and WASC, that's Western Association of Schools and Colleges, task force chair. I coordinate the International Baccalaureate and Advanced Placement programs at Charter Oak High School, and I teach 2 levels of world history. Prior to my work in education, I was a criminal defense attorney in Rancho Cucamonga. I am running for the school board to expand my service and impact in public education. This fall, there are 2 experienced women stepping down from the current board. I've been encouraged by colleagues and community members to run, and it would be my honor to fill one of those vacant seats. You may recognize me as a member of the Measure G Steering Committee, which helped pass the $58 million bond in 2016 to repair and modernize CUSD facilities. In addition, I've served as a member of the board of directors of the Claremont Educational Foundation for the last several years since Measure G, and I'm passionate about public education and hope to bring my skills and experience to the CUSD school board. I consider myself to be a practical and pragmatic educator, and as a member of the CUSD board, I plan to work collaboratively with our community to enhance existing programs and champion new opportunities, and most importantly, to support students, their families, and educators in our district. My focus throughout the campaign as an elected board member is 4 main priorities: educational equity, ensuring every student has access and support they need to achieve individual academic success. I intend to discuss this further in the question section of tonight's call. Responsible fiscal management is my next point. Thoughtful planning and decisive decision-making regarding budgeting for programs, people, facilities, and resources is our reality as we remain mindful of increasing budget challenges and cuts in funding from the state level. My next point is community conversation, continuing to foster a partnership between CUSD and its students and families through transparent conversation and collaboration. I feel the district's taken a very positive step convening the District Advisory Committee on Race and Equity, and recent participation at board meetings has been at record levels. And the last point is safety and wellness. It's important to regularly address campus safety concerns, student wellness, responsible use of technology, and the need for safe and modern facilities to build on the outstanding improvements accomplished by the Measure G bond. Additionally, post-COVID reintegration plans must be thought through in the physical and mental best interests of staff and students. Ensuring appropriate access to mental.
Put a bust in here. Thanks, that was a good presentation.
I know I'm running out of time.
We will try this out. Number 1, what are the long-term and short-term adjustments to teaching and support of students and families that will be necessary with the pandemic?
So the short-term adjustments for teachers, students, and families is to create the best virtual learning environment possible by providing academic, social, emotional, and technological support. Establishing a routine and setting a schedule along with expectations is very important for student success. Virtual and asynchronous daily instruction from a teacher while at home is uncharted territory for many students and educators, and parents need to insist on an appropriate learning space for their students, and teachers need to be flexible in their lesson design and implementation. As a teacher myself, I'm always suggesting to parents that they emulate the attitude they want their students to follow. I want to acknowledge that this is hard, very hard, and setting a positive and serious tone every day for the foreseeable future. It isn't easy, but students are going to thrive on positive parents and teachers leading by example. The long-term adjustments of distance learning still remain to be seen, but despite the many challenges, a few positive outcomes have already emerged that I hope can be sustained after we return to in-person instruction. The COVID-19 pandemic called for a redefinition of the school experience and curriculum delivery. And while the move online has been challenging, there's been some positive outcomes that I hope can be sustained even after we return to campus. Teachers have reinvented lessons to engage students via Zoom. Students and teachers have increased their communication skills through social and emotional learning incorporated into synchronous instructional time. And the use of Canvas has given teachers and families the opportunity to navigate and master one online format through which the district can provide support and training for all stakeholders. Online instruction has helped me.
I'm going to move you on to question number 2 now.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. Do you support Proposition 15? Why or why not? What would be the effective package on CUSD?
I am definitely in support of Prop 15, the split roll initiative. Any measure that can bring money into the district should be vigorously supported. CUSD stands to gain $4 million if it passes. California's current property tax assessment is based on the price of property at the time of purchase. Due to the passage of Prop 13 in 1978. And if passed, Prop 13 would assess property taxes for most commercial properties worth more than $3 million based on market value rather than purchase price. The law wouldn't go into effect until 2022-23, allowing businesses recovery time from the COVID-19 pandemic. Properties such as retail centers whose occupants are 50% or more small businesses would be taxed based on market value beginning in 2025 or 26, or at an even later date if the legislature decides. And that'll allow for even more recovery time from the COVID-19 pandemic. Homeowners would not be affected by the passage of Prop 15, and property taxes on homes would continue to be assessed under Prop 13. I know this is a contentious measure for some, but if we're honest, it's time for businesses to pay taxes more equitably and bring much needed revenue into public education.
Thank you. Question number 3. Nationally, the question of policing is being debated. Do you support the presence of a school resource officer at CUSD school?
If I'm elected to the school board, I promise to always use the best practice of investigating, evaluating, and openly discussing all program changes, cuts, revisions before they're proposed and decided upon. The presence of an SRO at our CUSD schools is currently at the forefront of many community conversations. It's an important issue to discuss. I support the district's choice to fund a school resource officer. However, I also recognize the need for increased counseling and mental wellness services. Additionally, it's important that the newly formed District Advisory Committee on Racial Equity examines the role of the SRO and how it can be improved upon through training and acknowledgement of the current campus climate and validation of personal safety concerns. I support the school resource officer also as an educator and a community member. I've seen firsthand the valuable services they provide. I've had many conversations with teachers, nurses, counselors, administrators, and students who rely on the SRO for very specific needs. Some examples include documenting and executing the 5150, the temporary involuntary psychiatric commitment of individuals who present a danger to themselves or others due to mental illness. If an SRO does a 5150, the school is notified when the student is released, and they can arrange the student study team and or the return to school meeting. Additionally, the SRO can participate in weekly student study teams. It's an uncomfortable reality that school violence exists, whether it's student to student, student to teacher. There's scenarios that require professional de-escalation to minimize harm and ensure safety. I'm not trained to de-escalate violent situations. Although this SRO is not on campus.
I'm going to move us on to the next question now. How should CUSD address the opportunity gap for students of different races, genders, abilities, and economic situations?
So we need to always be mindful of the idea that in achieving equity, we're meeting students where they are. Teachers have to offer differentiated instruction to a large group of students to meet individual needs. It's no secret that on the road to achieving equity, the same students will always rise to the top because of the availability of external resources, after-school tutoring, parent education level, summer programs. So what can we do as a community to solve that gap? If you raise the overall level of instruction, students will benefit, but the gap continues to grow. Like people say, a rising tide lifts all ships, but that's not the solution. Instead, the focus should be on what each student needs to help him or her access the content being presented. And that comes not only in the form of differentiated instruction, but tiered intervention for those students that really need it. And those are, it's like a tier 2 intervention might look like 5 days a week, 8 students to 1 teacher, or a tier 3 intervention, a teacher to a student for a larger number of minutes per week. The impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and the move to distance learning has brought student inequities to the surface. Some families are fortunate to be home during the day to assist their students and can provide external support such as tutoring or supplemental activities. For others, consistent in-home educational support is not possible. I have deep concerns about these educational gaps, many of which will not be fully understood until students return to school in person. We will need a multi-tiered system of support and intervention to address the needs of students who fall behind during distance learning. And as a board member, I will advocate strongly to help meet the needs of our most vulnerable populations. And educational equity also pertains to the measure of achievement, fairness, and opportunity in education for all students, regardless of their race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, or gender identification. CUSD has taken a necessary step in forming the Advisory Committee on Racial Equity, and I'm pleased to see the district's acknowledgement of this critical issue. And as a board member, I look forward to engaging in further conversations about thoughtful plans for action. Additionally, I'd like to see...
Let me move on to the very last question.
All right.
What more should Claremont schools do to produce graduates with an understanding of and commitment to American democracy?
As a history teacher, this question is very close to my heart. Educating students with the knowledge of our democratic system while instilling in them a love and respect for our process is foundational in the job I do every day. At minimum, the California Framework for History Social Science includes the development of democracy in America in grades 5, 8, and 11. And the foundations of democracy in ancient Greece and Rome are taught in grade 10 world history, or at least they're taught by me. In the senior year, students are required to take a semester of American government. And those are the basic requirements to which teachers must abide. And they use that as a starting point to build an understanding of American democracy. But an understanding alone doesn't lend itself to student commitment and allegiance to American democracy. Teaching and learning these principles is so much more meaningful when it's done in a way that connects to a student's own life. Engaging interactive assignments are key to increasing comprehension and infusing students with a love of history while producing graduates with an appreciation for democracy. Lessons and activities that give students real life experiences, such as connecting with local legislatures or examining and debating current issues in the United States or researching tuition costs or truancy laws. Students are far more invested in their learning when they're actively involved in it rather than passive observers. We need to create opportunities for our students also that are interdisciplinary, like involving English classes, to evaluate information and misinformation in the political media. We need to help students learn how to think, we need to promote activities that allow students the opportunity to engage in evaluation and analysis of actions, how to identify fallacies and become more informed and involved in local and national politics. Democracy is a verb. It's not a stationary thing. It requires action and give and take to ensure that students are informed and involved. If we limit democracy to an idea or a simple definition, we're limiting the whole principle behind it. Democracy is supposed to be empowering, so the challenge for teachers is to light that fire.
General presentation now. How do you sum up your candidacy?
I just want to say thank you again for providing the candidates with an opportunity to speak. As we head into the final weeks before the election, I hope you all will visit my website at kathyarcher4CUSD.com and follow me on Facebook and Instagram. On Facebook, it's Archer FOR for CUSD and Instagram at Archer for CUSD. I hope you'll keep in mind that I'm the only candidate with 24 years of experience in public education at the secondary level. I approach all decision-making carefully, and I assure you that I'll take the time necessary to examine and assess all board policies and actions. We're living in a society where often reactionary decisions are made with insufficient consideration of consequences. I believe in evidence-based exploration of fact and not a rush to judgment. I ask for your vote and your support in the election. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathy. Well done.
Thank you.
Let us move on to the next person. Bob Foss is the second candidate in alphabetical order for the school board positions. Bob, are you available?
I am. Thank you so much.
Okay. You now have 3 minutes to give us your story.
Great. Well, hi, everyone. Thank you for spending time with us tonight. My name is Bob Fass, and I grew up in Claremont. I attended Sycamore School, El Roble, and Claremont High School, and I am also a proud parent. I have a 15-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old son. I've been working as a volunteer with the district for more than a decade. I began with the CHS theater renovation, which you may recall was funded with a public and private partnership that matched a state redevelopment fund grant. Then I moved on to the Sycamore School Governance Council and was able to work with Superintendent Dr. Alsasser in his earlier days with the Sycamore School Library installation. From there, Nancy Tresser Osgood, who is a current school board member, invited me to join the board of the Claremont Educational Foundation. And I served that organization and chaired 2 multi-year strategic plans and also served as one of the presidents for 4 years. Through that program, we created many new initiatives, such as the Teacher Innovation Grant Program, the Community Partnership Grant Program, and the Community Conversations Program. I've served as a consultant to CLASP and Claremont Heritage. I serve currently on the Measure G Oversight Committee, as well as the LCAP Parent Advisory Council. My background is really in nonprofit work. I have a master's degree in nonprofit management, and my professional experience spans both arts and education. I worked for many years as an executive director in nonprofit professional theater, and I've also served as a former professor and currently as a staff member of a secondary school. I think that those skills have given me kind of a left brain, right brain approach to most things that I encounter with governance. The left brain side is very good with budgets and fiscal accountability, data analysis, and planning. The right hand side of my brain works very closely with creativity, innovation, and collaboration, and both come together in my work as a board member. I've served on more than a dozen nonprofit boards, and I believe that those skills make me an invaluable candidate for the Claremont School Board. My priorities include health and safety, and one of my roles in my current job is to be regulatory monitor with the LA County Department of Public Health. So I'm keeping a very, very close eye on what's going on in terms of reopening our schools. I'm also very concerned about budget and finance and taxpayer dollars being used wisely, academic excellence, of course, and equity and inclusion. Thanks so much for your time.
Okay, it's time to move on to the questions, Bob. Question 1. What are the long-term and short-term adjustments to teaching and support of students and families in this era of the pandemic?
Well, I have to start by prefacing my remarks with the fact that I'm not a classroom teacher, so I don't want to proclaim that I know better than the teachers do. I think it's really important that as school board members, we empower and encourage and support our teachers. But philosophically, I think it's a really important issue for us to focus on 3 C's: community, culture, and consistency. That's what our families are looking for right now. We need to slow down and let our students demonstrate their knowledge. We can't just talk at them through a screen. And we need to create clear, centralized, and frequent communication with our students and our families. I think that we have to focus and maintain support on our high-risk, high-need populations. That includes families with IEPs and 504 plans, and also providing assessments for things such as reading and mental health screening. I have encouraged the district to think about creating a parent resource center. I'd like it to be multilingual, a place where parents can turn for advice on technology or simply on where to get advice or who to speak with at the district level if they're having a problem. We have to provide our teachers with professional development. This has been a big learning curve for them. Going on to a common technology platform such as Canvas has really tested our teachers, and I applaud their work in trying to get onto that common platform. I think it's important that we try to minimize uncertainty and anxiety, such as login issues and return to school dates and COVID protocols. And lastly, I want to echo something that Ms. Archer said. We've seen great parent engagement. We need to increase those levels and keep them where they are now. It's been very, very heartening.
Okay, let's move on to question 2. Do you support Proposition 15? Why or why not What would be the effect of its passage on Claremont School District?
I do support Prop 15. I think that public education has been starved for revenue, and California is far behind many states in our nation. And it's shameful considering the size of our economy. Estimates show that we might be able to bring in $4.2 million to Claremont Unified School District, and we would do so by closing property tax loopholes so that everybody pays their fair share. We can also do that while protecting residential homeowners, and we can phase it in over time. So if there are effects such as rents on business owners, that can be phased in as well, and they can have time to prepare. I think the effect of all of this is much greater than one-time stimulus funding, such as we saw with the CARES Act. It provides reliable and stable revenue streams to school districts such as ours that will enable us to ensure that we can maintain teachers and staff, keep class sizes manageable, and offer academic and extracurricular programs that distinguish Claremont Unified and keep us at a high level of excellence.
Okay, question number 3. Nationally, the question of policing is being debated. Do you support the presence of a school resource officer at CUSD schools?
Following the murder of George Floyd, I began hearing and reaching out to Black and Brown students and families in our community, and they shared with me very deep concerns about what it is like to be a Black Indigenous person of color in society in general, and also in the presence of an armed officer, and that includes school sites and our school campuses. I listened very carefully and reached out to district staff, including the superintendent and also the faculty advisor of the Black Student Union. When asked if I would eliminate the school resource officer position, my response then, as much as it is today, that question's oversimplified. The SRO is part of a 10-year-old partnership between the district and the city. It administers programs that also must be reviewed, such as DARE. We have to explore what the continued relationship of Claremont Police would be if these changes were made. However, the stated purpose of the SRO on the city website is to reinforce a positive connection to a role model that they can turn to when they need help. And at the district level, we need to be focused on student outcomes. Some very brave students and their parents have shared that that's not currently occurring, and to ignore their voices would be akin to telling them that we don't care. After 10 years, it seems appropriate to evaluate the effectiveness of this partnership and the associated programs and look at alternatives that might better fit the needs of all of our students. I don't know yet what that means, but I'm looking into it. And I'm also reaching out across to see what the opinions are of people like Chief Vanderveen. I'm meeting with her on Wednesday, and I'll look forward to that conversation. I know it's a polarized issue, and I'm reviewing the data and looking for solutions as quickly as I can.
Thank you. Question number 4. How should CUSD address the opportunity gap for students of different races, genders, abilities, and economic situations?
Well, equity and inclusion are kind of at the heart of my campaign. I think students of all backgrounds, identities, and abilities deserve fair and equitable access to a CUSD education. For some, that may mean that the district provides extra measures or resources to ensure educational access. An example might be ESL learners. Recently, I've also seen some examples surfacing of income inequality, specifically as it relates to things like nutrition services or materials fees for elective classes, and prior to the pandemic, things such as field trips. I've also been reading about how this relates to such issues as iPad cameras, video calls like this, which might disclose a student's living conditions. Racial equity is also a big important priority, and I was shocked to learn that there are no Black teachers at Claremont High School. I also dug into the California Department of Education data to see what the disaggregated data was showing us about exclusionary discipline, and it's showing that it's disproportionate, especially to Black male students. To combat this, we need to look at bias training, recruitment and retention of teachers and staff, and practice de-escalation and restorative justice. We also need to take a careful look at the curriculum and ensure that it's inclusive of the contributions of all of the people who make up our great nation. And with regard to gender, I am an advocate of gender equity and the gender spectrum. I think we have to get away from binary definitions of gender, but I also know that there are certain gender identities that have been excluded from areas in the past, like academic disciplines of STEM. And lastly, our special education program is a model of excellence. The relationship, for instance, at Sumner Danbury provides the best of both worlds, adaptive learning and a chance to mainstream with another school and socialize with their children.
Okay, Bob, one last question. What more should Claremont schools do to produce graduates with an understanding of and commitment to American democracy?
Well, my overarching goal is to help our school children become successful and productive citizens who will lead lives of purpose. And to be successful and productive requires active engagement. That engagement should benefit our schools as well as our communities. When students contribute to their own well-being, they develop a sense of ownership and independence. We should share that power with students. It's a concept promoted heavily by the Search Institute. Doing so demonstrates respect for their abilities and allows them to collaborate with adults so that they're not simply subservient, but included in the decision-making process. That builds accountability, and it also builds consequences for actions. Groups like Interact, for instance, help to cultivate after-school community service, and so do nonprofits like Sustainable Claremont. Collaboration around a common vision is key to the learning process. At Bonita High School, they've developed an entire program around civic leadership. So in addition to their current service, students spend their senior year developing a 5-year post-high school plan to create goals that emphasize civic responsibility and community values. That type of program helps students develop a sense of purpose. This type of self-reflection is in itself a way to teach personal responsibility, planning, time management, and develop a vision that is greater than oneself. It requires critical thinking and experiential learning. As our politics become increasingly polarized and news is consumed instantaneously across digital media, it is essential to help our young people to process greater amounts of information, fact check, understand viewpoints, and formulate their own opinion.
Okay, slide right into what you want to say by conclusion.
Certainly. So it is a real honor to be able to run for school board. This is a district that means a great deal to me at multiple levels. And it's something that I've been very proud to serve, and I would be very proud to serve it in a new capacity. I would like to invite members of this call to visit my website at www.bobfast.com to learn more about my platform. And while you're there, you can see a couple of videos of town halls that I've conducted and learn more about my positions on these very, very important issues. I also am very, very proud to have broad community support. And on my website, you'll see a list of over 345 personal endorsements. I cherish those endorsements, and I cherish the relationships that I've built over time that have led to that trust and respect. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak with you tonight.
Thank you, Bob. That was nicely done. Okay, one last candidate for school board, Chris Manakia. And Chris, I know you're here. I saw you earlier. Would you come aboard?
Yes, Merle, and thank you, Sam and Merle. I just want to say how much of a privilege it is to have this opportunity to address so many people who have worked so hard in support and service to the party. My name is Chris Natikia, and I'm running for the Claremont School Board. I live in Claremont with my wife and my daughter, who's a 14-year-old freshman at Claremont High School. I'm a college professor. I've taught at Cal State San Bernardino for 25 years, city commissioner. I serve on the Community and Human Services Commission. I'm a former member of the School Site Council, member of the Local Control Accountability Plan Parent Advisory Committee, which is a school district committee. I'm liaison from my commission to the City Committee on Human Relations, and I'm also chapter vice president of my campus chapter of the California Faculty Association. I'm running because I want to stand up and speak up for Claremont students the same way that I've stood up and spoken up for others throughout my career, whether it's to bolster mental, emotional, and social health support, whether it's to strengthen critical thinking, address equity issues, or improve parent engagement. Today I'm here because I'm seeking your endorsement, and I believe that if one's going to seek the party's endorsement, one should be proud of one's membership in the party and also proud of one's activism in the service of it. As you know, I'm vice president of the Democratic Club of Claremont. I've worked hard to open up our spaces so that diverse voices could speak to us and we can expand our horizons. Last election, I canvassed every weekend day, Saturday and Sunday between Labor Day and Election Day for Sabrina Cervantes, that's a Democratic candidate down by Riverside for the state assembly. And I brought my daughter with me. As you know, I phone banked for elect Governor Newsom, Superintendent of Public Instruction Tony Thurmond, and Representative Michael Levin as well. You may also recall that I'm very proud of the fact that I went to Missouri with the AFL-CIO for a week and canvassed door to door in the rain, in the humidity, and the heat to oppose Right to Work Measure A, which was defeated. I'm proud of the fact that I joined teachers and United Teachers Los Angeles and in Los Angeles to support them in their epic battle for the soul of public education. And as you know, I'm active in my own labor union, the California Faculty Association, where I'm past faculty rights chair, which means I file grievances, enforce the collective bargaining agreement, and mostly handle sensitive personnel cases. I'm proud of all these things, and time again, I've supported the party with sweat equity, and I'd be honored to have your support.
Okay, let's head off to the questions, Chris. Number one, what are the long-term and short-term adjustments to teaching and support of students and families in an era of the pandemic?
Yeah, in terms of short-term, I think it's very important that teachers receive the professional development and training that's required for them to be successful in an online platform. There are national bodies that have accreditation standards that can take care of this. One of them is one that my campus has used to help train our faculty as well. And in addition to that, I think it's also important that teachers be very strategic in their homework assignments, not to overburden students with extra work or busy work in this time, because students are dealing with quite a lot as it is. So professional development is the number one short-term adjustment that needs to be made. There needs to be smart investments there. In terms of long-term adjustments, it's definitely student mental health. Counselors need to be reaching out to students. They need to be talking to them one-on-one or in small groups to find out where they are. And in addition to that, we need to be thinking about longer-term consequences too, because the impacts of this pandemic are going to be felt for years to come on our students' psyches, and we need to be ready for that.
Okay, Chris. Number two, do you support Proposition 15? Why or why not? What would be the effect of its passage on the Claremont Unified School District?
Well, yes, I most certainly do. In fact, I've endorsed it since the very beginning of my campaign, and I went to Assemblymember Holden's office early on to lobby for his support of the measure. And as you know, the party's behind it now, and that's very good. The impact of Prop 13 has been devastating on city finances and school finances as well. As you know, California went from 5th to 43rd in per pupil funding as a result of that. And we've seen the devastating impact that that has had over generations of students. We've seen long-term cuts in counselors, librarians, and nurses, where counselors are about half the ratio as they are in other states, librarians about a fifth, and nurses are at a ratio of about 2,500 to 1 across the state. In our own district, we see class sizes at the high school level in the mid-30s and higher. That to me just doesn't seem beneficial in the long run. CTA estimates that the district will garner about $4.25 million. And my hope is that we could use that to reduce class sizes and also to cushion the blow that we're going to experience the year after next and the year after that to the district budget.
Okay, question number 3. Nationally, the question of policing is being debated. Do you support the presence of a school resource officer at CAUSD schools?
Yes, in fact, I do think that there needs to be a case of taking away the SRO because, as I said earlier, it struck me as a case of misplaced priorities. When I investigated the mental health plank of my platform and discovered that there are no counselors at the elementary level, despite the fact that we see an explosion, is what I'm hearing, of students seeking through their parents more mental health support, it just seemed to me a case of misplaced priorities. The funding that's used for one school resource officer can be used to hire 2 mental health professionals, which, if targeted at the elementary level, would be a smart investment there. As counselors I've spoken to have said to me, prevention is the best intervention. Here would be a smart investment in terms of prevention. In addition to that, different students from different races have different perceptions of the presence of this school resource officer. That must be taken into account as well. And in terms of the impact on safety, I think it's really marginal if we pull back that school resource officer. We would need 40 times the coverage that we currently have in order to have a school resource officer at every school at every moment during the day. And the district just can't afford that. So it's a smarter investment to think about tackling these issues upstream, which is at mental health, before they might manifest themselves in violence later.
Thank you. Question 4. How should CUSD address the opportunity gap for students of different races, genders, abilities, and economic situations?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Merle. As some of you may know, I authored a piece in the Claremont Courier on August 4th that addressed this issue, and I invite you to look at it and see what I say there at length. In a nutshell, what I said there is that we need a multi-pronged approach, including getting ethnic studies in the curriculum, which is something that I've supported from the start of my campaign. And I worked for the companion bill that mandates ethnic studies in the Cal State University system where I teach. There's currently a bill on the governor's desk that would include a similar mandate for the high school level, and my hope is that the governor will sign it. I've also suggested, as a result of having a nice long conversation with Joe Salas, that one smart intervention might be to have some sort of formalized structure for parent groups of affinity groups like African American or Hispanic students in particular, that can help engage them at deeper levels that may have some payoffs in terms of closing equity gaps later. But that said, I want to emphasize that I'm thrilled that the Racial Equity Committee was formed and that I'm eager to let it do its work. I'm eagerly waiting what its outcome is, and I want to see it succeed. If I'm elected to the board, I'll do everything I can to make sure that it does succeed.
Thank you, Chris. Number 5, what more should Claremont schools do to produce graduates with an understanding of and commitment to American democracy?
Well, one of the things that I include on my platform, Merle, is a commitment to strengthening critical thinking skills. Now, in speaking with people, I understand that different people have different notions of what critical thinking involves. As a philosopher, someone who's taught political philosophy for 25 years, I mean, I have my own idea of what critical thinking involves and what it should involve. I have no intention of attempting to impose my own idea. I do think it requires a broad conversation, and I think that whatever it includes, it has to include those skills that make participation in democracy successful. What we see currently is a lot of negativity, and I feel that the best way to combat that negativity and to make sure that our graduates have a positive impact on our country and its democracy is to make sure that they have the intellectual self-confidence not to get drawn into that kind of that negativity that's a downward spiral. And the way you do that is to make sure that they possess the skills of being able to restate opposing arguments, defend a thesis, and criticize it, not by attacking the arguer's position, but the reasoning for that position. That's a skill, it's teachable, it's measurable, and I welcome a broader discussion about what critical thinking involves. That's the way to address and improve democracy in my view.
Okay, into your final presentation.
Yeah, well, I just want to thank everybody again for the opportunity to be here tonight. And what I do want to say is that I have broad support in the community. I'm very pleased and proud that I've just earned the endorsement of the Claremont Faculty Association. That's my second teachers union group to support me. The first, of course, was the California Faculty Association, which is my own employee association or labor union. I've also received the support of the LA County Democratic Party, been endorsed by them. I've been endorsed by Claremont Change. I've been endorsed by a local labor union that's right on Arrow Highway. That's the United Food and Commercial Workers 1428. I know many of their members and supported them when they were working for better wages at Vons locally. And so I've got this broad support in the community, and I look forward to working with the Dem Party at the county level and at the city level to advance the issues and concerns that we share.
Thanks, Chris. Okay, that completes our trip through the CUSD candidates. As I said, there are 3 of them for 2 positions, and all are registered Democrats. We do have one more candidate tonight from a completely different race. Claremont this time is experiencing its first election with council districts. And so we have one candidate from District 5 who will be with us tonight. There are other Democrats running there, but nobody responded except Michael Sarasso. So Michael, you're available. You're on.
Thanks, everyone. I'm excited to be here, and it's hard to follow those 3 amazing candidates, so thank you. I also want to say thank you before I get into my remarks to everybody on this call. As a lifelong Democrat and one who has participated at all levels in the Democratic Party, I know how hard it is to do the work that you do, from knocking on doors to making phone calls to participating and engaging with folks who sometimes disagree with you and are not always very nice about it. But that's how you change minds. And some of you I've worked with over the last 8-9 years. I know Sam, when I was a college student at Pitzer College, he was one of the first individuals that I had collaborated with. We did a city hackathon together where we brought technology and city government together. And Sam was kind and generous to me. And to this day, he continues to be. To Debbie Evans, who we've worked on some national stuff together, helping Jamie Harrison and raising money for Jamie Harrison and making sure we win in the South. And she continues to mentor me. I mean, she sat across from me 2 years ago and said, you need to put your work in if you ever decide to run for council. And I hope I've made you proud, Deb. And then to Joe, who I've established a close relationship with the last couple of years, and I'm helping him on his current campaign. He finds ways to continue to push me and challenge me and think about things differently each and every day. So I'm spoiled with individuals around me who continue to push me. And that is what my campaign is all about. It's we-centered. We have brought in individuals into this campaign that have never participated at the local level. And that was the intent from the beginning. I jumped into this race. I wasn't expecting to jump into this race. But with COVID-19, the pandemic, and the stories that I was hearing as an intern at the Claremont Courier while writing for them, I was really moved by the stories that I was told about individuals feeling isolated, feeling separated, and feeling very disconnected from the world. And if there's anything that I can do in this election as a candidate, and hopefully as a council person, is that I can bring an emotional intelligence to those challenges and either listen and be supportive and be there and find solutions and creative solutions to be able to get individuals through this and steer us through the global pandemic, and help our small businesses and make sure that we bring racial justice to our community. So I'm grateful to be here, and I'm excited to answer your questions. By the way, 20 seconds less because I have a stopwatch because I have prepared. So game on, folks.
The questions for the council, I've got them out here. They differ slightly, but overlap with those for the school board. So number 1, do you support Proposition 15? What effect will its passage have on Claremont?
Yes, I 100% support Prop 15. We have about $496 million worth of commercial real estate here that we bring in each and every year. We bring in as a city about $500,000 from that. With this additional income, we can bring in additional couple $100,000 depending on the amount that we bring in, and that's still to be determined. This is with a caveat though. We need to understand that couple $100,000, we need to think about how we're going to allocate it. From my perspective, we need to be thinking about it in 3 ways. One is to make sure we jumpstart our local economy. We don't know what the post-pandemic world's going to look like. So I'm always going to have the mindset of stimulating our economy and bringing revenue into the city. 2 is that we're going to have a structural deficit that's going to be between $2 and $3 million. I want to make sure that we're thinking about ways to pay that structural deficit. And 3, a lot of you appreciate and are afforded great benefits by the city. We have great city government services. We're at the point now that if we do not generate revenue to keep up with our costs, we're going to have to think about cutting some services, which is something I do not want to do. So that money is going to be extremely helpful to be able to address those 3 buckets.
Okay. Number 2, in what Claremont community organizations have you had a leadership role? How has this leadership experience prepared you for serving on council?
I practiced this one in front of the mirror because I haven't been a very active local Democrat, but if you know me, you know that I've been active with the Democratic Party for the last 12 years. I worked for President Obama, I worked for Senator Bernie Sanders, and I worked recently for Mayor Pete Buttigieg. I also served in Congress, where I was there for a year working for a Democrat as a research assistant. My philosophy has always been to never ask, but to initiate. In this city, I have always looked into opportunities and plugged myself in. I was a mentor at Uncommon Good because I felt students, young people from low income backgrounds, POCs, needed support and needed additional support. I went to SAM when I felt that we needed more technology in our city government. I organized the first citywide city council debate on homelessness that Sam participated with and other council candidates that participated in 2018. I worked side by side with Jed Liano and Zach Corser and many others to initiate some of the conversations that we had on our housing trust. And I decided, without anybody asking me, to decide to run in 2018 because I felt that south of the village wasn't being represented in the discourse and the dialogue during that 2018 city council run. I am a Democrat and we don't wait around. We see something, we go in and we say we're going to step up and do it. And I've always had the support of friends and families anytime that I've been able to say, hey, I see that problem and I want to address it. And that's how I've approached my work here in Claremont.
Okay. Number 3, and you touched on this broadly, as revenues decrease, what would you cut first?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily, I don't see it that way. That's a challenging, I'm not going to try to, this campaign isn't about misleading or doing performative politics and trying to appease everyone with the right language. So the way I see it is that this is going to be a challenging topic. I spoke with Adam today, who manages the budget in city government. And I said, what are we needing to think about when we're approaching the budget? Because this is a tough question and it's not an easy answer. And he said, it's a tough question and not an easy answer for us. But I do think you'll see this in my platform. We look at policing and we look at opportunities to potentially reduce the amount of money that we put into policing and reallocate that in a different way. And what I mean by that is that the police should no longer be the first responders for substance abuse or mental health, or those struggling with mental health, substance abuse, and drug addiction, mental health, and yes, I'm saying that over, sorry. And so from my philosophy is, if we can delegate those responsibilities to other institutions, if it's Tri-City, or work with our Claremont colleges to actually build out an infrastructure to support programs like that, we can reduce the amount of money that we put into our policing and actually save some money and save some costs that way. But there are a lot of duplicate efforts that the city performs that a lot of nonprofit organizations also perform. And we need to take a look at that when we are evaluating our budget. Simply put, it's not an easy thing to solve.
Okay, 4th question. You've already touched a good deal on this, so you might vary it a bit. What needs to be done in Claremont for us to join in the national effort to reimagine policing?
First is to acknowledge that implicit bias is part of all of our lives, and that we all participate in some way, that our institutions reflect our own implicit bias, and that we need to continue to have a conversation about what we do in our day-to-day lives and how that reflects in our institutions. 2 is to make sure that our police commission, or whatever form that looks like, has the teeth to hold our police officers accountable, to make sure that they're held accountable to a citizen oversight committee or commission. 3 is to make sure our stop data is released so we can actually evaluate that information to see how much racial profiling is involved when individuals are being stopped within the city and outside of the city. 4 is to have implicit bias trainings, not only for our police officers, but for city government officials, to make sure that they understand how to communicate and how their actions and their words can actually contribute to someone feeling out of place in a community that they call home.
Okay, one last question. Our housing problems cover both homelessness and the lack of affordable housing. How should Claremont proceed to solve those problems?
Yeah, first, disassociate affordable housing with overdevelopment. Bottom line is we need more affordable housing in this community. I'm 100% for it. My website shows that we are unequivocal about it. There are a couple folks in my race that are actually not for additional affordable housing. I am for additional affordable housing, and I want to make sure that we build it wherever we can. Simply put, as long as it's safe and it doesn't participate in undermining neighborhoods or communities, or better yet, overdevelopment where we're all crowded, which is not the case. And the Village South is not. I don't look at the Village South as overdevelopment. We are going to need to be creative, the same way Jed Liano was creative with Baseline. You saw the creativity that he had to do to build 15 affordable housing units. That means to expand our inclusionary ordinance from 15 to 25%. So we build more affordable housing units, not less. You're going to need a regional ambassador to think about ways to bring affordable housing into this community, as well as connecting the regional agencies and organizations that focus not only on affordable housing and bringing low-income housing to communities, but also homelessness. Our homeless issue is Pomona's homeless issue. Pomona's homeless issue is our issue. So if we're working in silos, we are not going to be able to get ahead of the homeless problem. And that means that we need to have a scalable infrastructure similar to what we see in Rancho Cucamonga that really supports the idea that we are going to see an increased number of homeless individuals living in our community. And instead of acting like that doesn't exist, we need to act like it does, so we can get ahead of the problem and actually treat individuals who fall into homelessness immediately, and not those who have been in homeless for 2, 3, 4 years, where mental health struggles will continue to grow and they'll be harder to actually put through the continuum of care.
Thank you, Mike. It's time for you to close things up. Tell us why we should vote for you.
Did you say closing? Sorry.
Closing.
Oh, awesome. I'm grateful to be here. I am grateful to be a candidate. I wouldn't be here today if I wasn't encouraged by my peers. This campaign is really focused on affordable housing, affordable rent, reimagining community safety, and really stimulating the local economy. Everything we do will need to be thinking about the COVID recovery and the post-pandemic strategy. We can't act like these things don't intersect. More affordable housing means we'll bring more working families into this community, which means they'll spend more money at our local businesses, which means that it'll promote more minority-owned businesses and more equity that could be spread around. Reimagining community safety means that our neighbors, people of color who live in this community, will not feel the weight of their identity if we acknowledge that implicit bias runs through our community and we are openly willing to address it. This is what this campaign is about. And we want to bring a lot of these issues to the attention of a community, but also we want to make sure that folks feel like they're part of something, that this isn't a campaign that is trying to isolate anybody, or if someone disagrees with me on 15 or 20% of the issues, that they don't feel like that I'm a candidate that they can't come to and speak to. This isn't about being hostile or being right or wrong. This is about bringing a community together that is struggling with a pandemic, that is struggling economically, that we are seeing living rooms turn into classrooms. And there has to be a lot of empathy and a lot of emotional intelligence in this next council to really come together to come up with solutions, because they're not all available to us right now. And I hope to be that council person for you for the next 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, we have moved through our list of interviews tonight. To close it off, just let me remind you that there will be another program tomorrow night. We will be interviewing the candidates for the District 1 race, council race, and for the Citrus College Board of Trustees. So remember, 6 o'clock tomorrow night too. Sam.
There, if we do have a new addition. So as Meryl said, we'll have both the candidates for the, or 2 of the 3 candidates for Citrus College. And then we do have 2 of the candidates for the City Council District 1. Actually 3 of the 4. We did add Ethan Resnick as well, along with Zachary and Christine. And then we have Danelle Clark, who will also be there tomorrow. So tomorrow we're gonna have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people. So it should be probably like a half hour longer than tonight's presentations, which everyone did a great job. Everyone stayed on time. There were some worries that we were gonna have to cut people off. So good job to all the candidates.
Okay, thanks. See you tomorrow night.
Cool. And this is recorded. It'll be available tomorrow. Cool. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.